Hello everyone, my name is Dinesh Varyani and welcome to my course on Java unit testing with Mockito. And in this section of course we will discuss about the basic introduction to unit testing. So friends, before starting with Mockito, we will be looking into some terminologies related to unit testing. So the first thing which comes into our mind is what is unit testing. So if you see, a unit test is a piece of code written by a developer to test certain functionality of code. Now what do we mean by it? So usually in day-to-day work, a developer writes a functionality of code in its development phase. But in order to test that whether the code written by him is correct, developer writes yet another piece of code which we call unit test. And that piece of code basically provides a feedback to developer that whatever the functionality of code he has written is correct. Also friends, here you can see the functionality of code which is written by developer is basically written inside a class. And let's say he want to test that class. So there is a term associated with that class which he want to test. We call it as system or class under test. And the method which is written inside this class where the functionality of code lies and which the developer want to test is actually called as method under test. So friends, what unit test does is, unit test instantiate the class under test because we want to test that particular class. Then it executes the method under test because whatever the functionality of code which we want to test is written inside this method. And finally it verifies that it worked as expected. Moving ahead. So friends, what makes a good unit test? So here you can see a good unit test should be easy to write. So why it should be easy to write? Because as the term is unit test, so by unit we mean the small piece of code. And if we want to test a small piece of code, then the whatever test case is around it, it should be easy to write. And also the code which developer want to test can have many scenarios. So in order to test those scenarios, the developer has to write many unit tests. So therefore the unit test should be easy to write, meaning that developer shouldn't put a lot of efforts in writing those unit tests. The second thing which makes a good unit test should be its readability. So as we discussed that a good unit test is easy to write, it should be easy to read. So here by readability we mean that the test should show its intent, that what it is actually testing. And let's say if a particular developer has written some unit test, so for the other developer the test case should be readable so that the other developer doesn't have to put a lot of effort in figuring out what actually the unit test does. The third thing which makes a good unit test is that it should be reliable. So by reliability we mean that let's say we have written few unit tests. So those unit tests shouldn't be dependent on each other or the environment in which they are getting executed. So for example, let's say we are running few unit tests on one particular machine and those are getting succeeded. And the same unit test case if we are running on other machine are getting failed. So those unit tests are not good unit tests because they are not reliable. Sometimes it may happen that the unit tests are running on one machine and let's say if we are running it on any continuous integration server, they are getting failed. So those unit tests are not reliable. The fourth characteristic which makes a good unit test is it should be fast. So by fast we mean that when we execute a unit test, it should provide the feedback to the developer very quick. Because in a particular project, a developer writes hundreds or thousands of unit tests, and what usually the developer does is that they run the unit test every time so that they can get the feedback about the system which they are testing. So if they are running those test cases very frequently, they should not wait. The feedback should be provided to them very quick. So therefore a good unit test is a test which executes fast and provides the feedback to developer very quick. The last characteristic of a good unit test is it should be isolated. So friend, let's say if you want to test a particular class and that class is dependent on external services such as database, over network calls, or any other external services which takes in time. So what happens is those are the external factors and they may take time to bring back the results. So if they are consuming much time, then what happens is the unit tests are no longer fast. So therefore, whenever you want to unit test a particular class, that class should be isolated from the external factors so that we can test that class by our unit test, and those unit tests are running fast, they are reliable, readable and easy to write. So friends, these are the few characteristics of the good unit test. So friend, let's say we are given a book service class and let's say we want to test that class. So usually book service will be our class under test, and let's say this book service is dependent on these three external dependencies. The first, which is book repository. So what this book repository does, it communicates with the database. So it may happen that book service calls this book repository to save something or to read something from the database. It can also depend to the email service to send an email through this email server, and also it may happen that it can call an API by going over the network to fetch some data related to author. So friends, whenever you want to test this book service class and its methods, so what happens is these external dependencies come into picture, and if you are doing the unit testing of book service class, then we know that the book service class should be tested in isolation. So what do we do is, whenever we write the unit test cases for book service class, we usually cut these external dependencies because we want to test the book service in isolation. So here you can see the external dependency should be removed from the unit test by replacing the real objects. So here if you see, these are the real objects with their fake replacements called as test doubles. So what do we do is, whenever you want to unit test a particular class, we replace these external dependencies with their fake replacements called as test doubles. So friends, for example, let's say if you are directing any particular movie, so in that movie there are various actors playing their part, but usually what happens is whenever any dangerous scene comes, instead of the original actor performing the stuff, usually the stuntman performs the scene, and when we watch the movie it looks like the actor is performing the dangerous scenes. So here a test double is nothing but a stuntman which actually replace the real objects which are the actors and help us in testing the class under test. So when we do the testing, it looks like we are testing the book service class with these external dependencies, but behind the scene what happens is that test doubles are coming into picture and helping us to test the book service class, because those test doubles do not go to the database or communicate with any external server or goes over the network to get something. We will look into test doubles in greater detail in our upcoming lectures, and we will see that how Mockito helps in creating those test doubles. So friends, I hope you like this video. Thanks, have a nice day.